My name's Emily, and I'm 32. I'm sitting at my kitchen table in our quiet Ohio home, staring at a text from my husband, James. He's working late again. My stomach twists like it's been doing for months. Something's off, and it's not just him. The people I called friends, the ones I trusted like sisters, they're hiding something. I found a photo from our wedding day in my pocket, faded but heavy with promises. Now I'm questioning everything. Have you ever felt a betrayal creeping in? I'm sharing my story to find answers. Where are you watching from? Like and subscribe to join me on this journey. I pushed open the door to Brood Awakening, our local coffee shop, the bell above jingling softly. The smell of roasted beans hit me familiar and grounding, but my nerves were still raw from last night's text from James. I slid into our usual booth by the window, the one with a crack in the vinyl seat. Samantha was supposed to meet me here like we'd done every Thursday for years. I needed her today, needed to spill the weight of my doubts about James and hear her tell me I was wrong. The chalkboard menu loomed across the room, scribbled with specials in bright pink and yellow. I stared at it, tracing my finger along the table's edge where someone had carved their initials. My mind kept circling back to James's message. Working late, don't wait up. It wasn't just the words. It was the coldness, the way he'd been dodging me for weeks. I'd spent the morning replaying our last real conversation a month ago, when he'd promised to take me to the lake for our anniversary. That plan had fizzled out, replaced by more late nights at the office. Samantha burst through the door 10 minutes late, her blonde hair tangled like she'd rushed over. She waved, flashing a quick smile, but her eyes darted to her phone before she even sat down. "Sorry, Em. Crazy morning," she said, sliding into the booth. Her purse hit the table with a thud, and I noticed a new bracelet on her wrist, silver, with a small heart charm. It caught the light, and my stomach flipped. I'd seen one just like it in James's car last week, tucked in the glove compartment, when I'd grabbed his registration for an oil change. I'd thought nothing of it then, just some random trinket. Now it felt like a puzzle piece I couldn't place. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "Sam, I need to talk." I said, my voice quieter than I meant. "It's about James. He's been distant. Like, really distant. I don't know if I'm crazy, but I'm starting to think something's going on." I looked at her, waiting for the Samantha I knew, the one who'd stayed up with me in college, dissecting every breakup, promising we'd always have each other's backs. She barely glanced up from her phone, her fingers tapping out a text. "You're probably just overthinking it," she said. Her tone clipped like she was scolding a child. "James is swamped at work, right? You know how guys get when they're stressed." She set her phone down, but her eyes flicked to it again like she was waiting for something. I blinked, stung. This wasn't the response I'd expected. "Yeah, but it's more than that," I pressed, leaning forward. "He's barely home, and when he is, he's glued to his phone. I found this weird text last night, something about a meeting, but it didn't sound like work. I need you to tell me I'm not losing it." Samantha sighed, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "Emily, you've got to chill. You're reading into things. James loves you. He's not that kind of guy." Her words were meant to reassure, but they landed like a slap. She picked up the menu, scanning it like we were done talking. "Let's order. I'm starving." I sat back, my chest tight. The coffee shop felt smaller, the hum of conversation around us louder. I wanted to scream to make her listen, but doubt crept in. Maybe she was right. Maybe I was seeing problems where there weren't any. I'd always trusted Samantha's judgment. She'd been the one to talk me through my worst moments, like when my dad left when I was 16. She'd been my rock. But now her dismissal felt like a wall between us. I glanced at her bracelet again, that heart charm glinting under the fluorescent lights. "That's new," I said, nodding toward it, trying to keep my voice light. "Where'd you get it?" She looked down, almost startled, then covered it with her sleeve. "Oh, this? Just a gift?" she said too quickly. "Nothing special." She waved down the waitress ordering a latte without asking if I wanted anything. The conversation shifted to her job, her new boss, anything but James. I nodded along, but my mind was elsewhere, stuck on that bracelet, on her coldness, on the growing hole in my gut. As we left the shop, the autumn air sharp against my face, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. Samantha hugged me goodbye, but it was quick, perfunctory, her phone already back in her hand. I walked to my car, the weight of her words pressing down on me. Overthinking. Chill. But the bracelet, the one matching the trinket in James's car, burned in my mind. I didn't want to believe it meant anything. I couldn't. Not yet. I got home just as the streetlights flickered on, casting a dim glow through our living room curtains. The house was too quiet, the kind of silence that presses against your ears. James was still in the shower, the faint hum of water running upstairs. His phone sat on the coffee table screen, dark, tempting me. I'd never been the type to snoop, but Samantha's coldness at the coffee shop had left me rattled, like I was grasping for something solid to hold on to. My fingers hovered over the phone, guilt prickling my skin. But I needed answers. I unlocked it. His passcode was still our anniversary date, which stung more than it should have. The screen lit up, and I scrolled through his texts, my heart pounding. Most were work-related, boring threads about deadlines and meetings. Then I saw one from a contact labeled, "Work no name, just a number." It was from last night. "Meet me at the Hilton 8 p.m. Don't be late." My breath caught. The Hilton wasn't where his company held meetings. It was a hotel, the kind you don't book for business. I stared at the words, my mind racing. Maybe it was a client, a last-minute thing, but the tone felt too familiar, too secretive. I checked the thread, but there were no other messages, like he'd deleted them. My hands shook as I set the phone down, the screen still glowing. The shower stopped, and I heard James's footsteps on the stairs. I shoved the phone back where it was, my pulse hammering in my throat. He came down in a towel, hair dripping, and grabbed his phone without a glance at me. "You okay?" he asked, but his voice was flat, like he was checking a box. I nodded, forcing a smile, but my mind was screaming. That text wasn't right. None of this was right. I needed to talk to someone who'd listen. Not Samantha, she'd already shut me down. Rebecca. She was my best friend, the one who'd been there when I lost my job 2 years ago, who'd cried with me when we thought James might not make it through that car accident. She'd understand. I waited until James went to bed, his snores filling the house, before I called her. The phone rang twice, and she picked up, her voice bright despite the late hour. What's up? It's been forever." I could hear music in the background, like she was out somewhere. "Becca, I need to talk," I said, curling up on the couch, clutching a throw pillow my mom had made for our wedding. Its edges were fraying, the blue stitching coming loose. "It's James. I found this text on his phone, something about meeting at a hotel. I'm freaking out, and Samantha just told me I'm overreacting. I don't know what to think." There was a pause, then a laugh, sharp and unexpected. "Oh, Emily, come on," Rebecca said, her tone light, but edged with something I couldn't place. "You're checking his phone now. That's a bit much. Don't you think James is crazy about you? You're probably just stressed. You've always been kind of clingy with him." The word hit like a punch. Clingy. I gripped the pillow tighter, my nails digging into the fabric. Clingy. I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. "Becca, this isn't me being paranoid. Something's wrong. I can feel it. I just need you to hear me out." I'm hearing you," she said, but her voice was impatient now, like I was a kid throwing a tantrum. "Look, I'm at a bar with some friends. Can we talk about this later? You're blowing this way out of proportion. James isn't cheating. He's not that guy." The music swelled, and she mumbled something about needing to go before hanging up. I sat there, the phone still pressed to my ear, the silence heavier than before. Clingy. Overreacting. The words echoed, each one slicing deeper. Rebecca had never talked to me like that, not in 10 years of friendship. I thought of all the times she'd flirted with James at parties, her hand on his arm, her laugh too loud. I'd brushed it off, told myself it was just her personality. But now those moments felt different, like clues I'd ignored. I stood up, pacing the living room, the hardwood cold under my bare feet. The pillow was still in my arms, its frayed edges catching on my sleeve. I set it down suddenly, hating how it reminded me of better days. My eyes landed on a photo on the mantel, me and Rebecca, at a music festival last summer, our arms around each other, grinning like nothing could break us. But tonight, her words had cracked something inside me. First, Samantha, now Rebecca. The people I trusted most were pushing me away, and I didn't know why. I sank back onto the couch, my mind spinning. That text on James's phone wasn't just a random message. It was a thread I needed to pull, even if it unraveled everything. I thought about calling my sister Claire, but stopped myself. I wasn't ready to admit how bad things were, not yet. Instead, I stared at the ceiling, the shadows shifting as a car passed outside. Samantha's bracelet, Rebecca's laugh, that hotel text, they were pieces of something bigger, something I wasn't ready to face. But the doubt was growing, and I knew I couldn't ignore it much longer. I walked into Rusty's bar on Saturday night, the air thick with cigarette smoke and the clink of beer bottles. The place was packed, neon signs buzzing above the counter, casting a red glow over the crowd. Samantha had texted me about a group hangout, insisting I come despite our awkward coffee shop talk. I almost didn't show, but I needed to see my friends to feel normal again, even if Rebecca's words from the other night still stung like a fresh cut. I spotted them in the back, sprawled across a corner booth, Samantha, Rebecca, and Natalie, their laughter loud over the country song blaring from the jukebox. I slid into the booth, forcing a smile. Samantha raised her glass, her silver bracelet catching the light again. "There she is," she said, but her eyes didn't meet mine. Natalie grinned, but it felt off, like she was performing. Rebecca barely looked up, scrolling through her phone. The table was littered with empty nacho baskets and half-drunk pitchers, like they'd been here for hours without me. I tried to join the conversation, asking Natalie about her new job at the boutique. She answered in short bursts, her attention drifting to Samantha. I caught them exchanging a glance, then Natalie leaned in, whispering something I couldn't hear. Samantha giggled, covering her mouth, and my stomach twisted. "What's so funny?" I asked, keeping my voice light, though my hands clenched under the table. "Oh, nothing," Natalie said, waving me off. "Just a dumb work thing." But her tone was too quick, too practiced. Rebecca snorted, still glued to her phone, and I felt the air shift, like I was the only one not in on the joke. I scanned their faces, searching for the friends I'd known forever. The ones who'd thrown me a surprise birthday party last year, who'd shown up with ice cream when my cat died. But tonight, they felt like strangers. The jukebox switched to a slow song one James and I had danced to at our engagement party, his hands warm on my waist. The memory hit hard, and I glanced at the door, hoping he'd walk in. He'd said he might join us after work, but it was already 9, and no sign of him. I pulled out my phone to text him, but before I could, Natalie started talking about some guy she'd met, her voice loud, pulling everyone's attention. I listened, nodding, but my mind was elsewhere, stuck on that hotel text I'd found on Samantha's bracelet on Rebecca, calling me clingy. Then I heard it. Natalie's voice dropped low again, whispering to Samantha. "You sure she doesn't know?" My head snapped up. They froze like kids caught sneaking candy, and Samantha shot Natalie a look that could have shattered glass. "Know what?" I asked, my voice sharper than I meant. The table went quiet, the music filling the space between us. Samantha laughed, but it was forced high-pitched. "Got him, relax. We're just messing around." She reached for the pitcher, pouring herself another beer, her hands unsteady. Rebecca finally looked up, her eyes narrowing. "Yeah, don't make a thing out of it," she said, her tone cold, like I was the problem. Natalie stared at her lap, picking at a napkin. I opened my mouth to push, to demand answers, but the bar door swung open and James walked in. My heart lifted for a split second, thinking he'd come to save me from this mess. But he didn't look at me. He headed straight for the bar, ordered a whiskey, and leaned against the counter, chatting with the bartender, like he had all the time in the world. I waited for him to turn to wave anything. He didn't. Samantha nudged Rebecca, and they started whispering again, their heads close. Natalie joined in, and soon they were laughing loud and sharp at something I wasn't part of. I felt like I was shrinking the booth, swallowing me whole. The song on the jukebox faded, replaced by another, but all I could hear was their laughter, mocking me, shutting me out. Then Ethan, Natalie's brother, appeared at the edge of the booth. He was older, quiet, the kind of guy who always seemed to know more than he let on. He caught my eye, his expression heavy, like he was carrying something he didn't want to say. Can we talk?" he asked, his voice low, barely audible over the bar's noise. I nodded, desperate for an escape, and followed him to a quieter corner near the dartboards. We stood by a high-top table, the wood sticky with spilled drinks. Ethan rubbed the back of his neck, avoiding my gaze. "Look, I don't want to stir things up," he started, "but I've seen some stuff. About James, I didn't want to say anything, but—" He trailed off, glancing at the booth where my friends were still laughing. "What stuff?" I asked, my voice barely steady. My heart was pounding, the noise of the bar fading into a dull roar. Ethan sighed, his eyes finally meeting mine. "I saw him with someone, a couple times. I don't know who, but it wasn't work. Natalie told me to keep my mouth shut, said it wasn't my business." He shook his head like he was ashamed. "I'm sorry. I should have told you sooner." The words hit like a freight train. I gripped the edge of the table, my knuckles white. James. Someone else. Natalie knew. My mind spun, piecing together Samantha's dismissal. Rebecca's cruelty, the whispers I'd just overheard. They weren't just shutting me out, they were hiding something. Something big. I looked back at the booth at my so-called friends, their heads bent together, and anger surged through me hot and unstoppable. Ethan reached out like he wanted to say more, but I couldn't hear it. All I could feel was the betrayal, sharp and deep, cutting through everything I thought I knew. I left Ethan standing by the dartboards, his words echoing in my head like a bad song stuck on repeat. My legs felt unsteady as I made my way to my car, the gravel crunching under my boots in the parking lot. The night air was sharp, cutting through my thin jacket, but it did nothing to cool the fire in my chest. James with someone else. Natalie knowing. Samantha and Rebecca's whispers. It was all too much, piling up like bricks on my lungs. I slid into the driver's seat, slamming the door, and gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles ached. The bar's neon sign glowed in the distance, mocking me with its cheerful flicker. I couldn't go back inside, couldn't face their fake smiles or James's indifference. Instead, I fumbled in my purse for my keys, my hands shaking so badly I dropped them twice. That's when I saw it, James's jacket slung over the passenger seat from yesterday. He'd left it after borrowing my car, claiming he needed it for a quick errand. I hadn't thought to check it then, but now, with Ethan's confession burning in my mind, I reached for it, like it held the truth. I dug into the pockets, expecting nothing but lint or loose change. My fingers closed around a folded piece of paper, crisp and out of place. I pulled it out, my heart thudding, and unfolded it under the dim glow of the car's overhead light. It was a hotel receipt from the Hilton, dated last weekend, when James had told me he was at a work conference in Cleveland. Room 312, one night, 2 guests. The total stared up at me, a number that felt like a betrayal in itself. My throat tightened, and I pressed the receipt against the steering wheel, rereading it, hoping I'd missed something, anything that would make it innocent. But there was no mistake. No conference had happened. I'd called his office that weekend, and his assistant had said he was out of town. I'd believed him like always because I trusted him, because I loved him. Now the receipt felt like a knife twisting deeper with every second I held it. I stuffed it back into the jacket, my hands trembling, and leaned my head against the seat, trying to breathe. The car smelled faintly of his cologne, a scent that used to comfort me, but now made my stomach churn. I needed to talk to someone, anyone who'd listen. Not Rebecca, she'd laughed me off, called me clingy. Not Natalie, who'd known and said nothing. Samantha was my last hope, the friend I'd always turn to when the world felt too heavy. I pulled out my phone, my fingers clumsy as I dialed her number. It rang 4 times before she picked up, her voice sharp with irritation. "Em, what's wrong? I'm still at the bar." "Sam, I found something," I said, my voice cracking. "A receipt. From a hotel. James wasn't at a conference last weekend. He was with someone. I need you to tell me what's going on." I waited, holding my breath, praying she'd be the friend I needed, the one who'd hug me and promise we'd figure it out together. She sighed long and exasperated, like I was a chore. "Emily, you're obsessed," she snapped. "You're digging through his stuff now. This is ridiculous. You need to let it go. You're going to push him away with this crap." Her words were venom, each one sinking deeper into the wound Ethan had opened. I could hear the bar's noise in the background, laughter and clinking glasses, like she was already done with me. "Sam, please," I said, tears burning my eyes. "I'm not making this up. Ethan saw him with someone. He said you guys knew. Just tell me the truth." My voice broke, and I hated how small it sounded, how desperate. There was a pause, then a cold laugh. "Ethan's full of it and you're spiraling. I'm not doing this right now. Call me when you're ready to act like an adult." The line went dead, and I sat there, the phone slipping from my hand. My best friend, the one I'd shared everything with, had just hung up on me. She didn't care. None of them did. I stared out the windshield, the parking lot blurring as tears spilled down my cheeks. The receipt lay crumpled on the seat beside me, undeniable proof that my marriage was crumbling. But it wasn't just James. It was Samantha, Rebecca, Natalie, the people I'd trusted with my heart. They were shutting me out, lying to me, maybe even laughing behind my back. I thought of every moment we'd shared, every late-night talk, every promise we'd made. Had it all been a lie? My phone buzzed, and I flinched, hoping it was Samantha calling back to apologize. It was a text from my sister Claire. "You okay? Haven't heard from you in a bit." I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. I wanted to tell her everything, to spill the pain, and let her hold me like she did when we were kids. But shame stopped me. How could I admit that my life was falling apart, that the people I loved most were betraying me? I set the phone down my chest so tight I could barely breathe. The car's windows were fogging up the world outside, fading into a hazy blur. I reached out, drawing a shaky circle on the glass, then wiped it away, my hand smearing the condensation. It felt like my life, something I'd built, something I'd believed in, erased in an instant. Samantha's voice echoed in my head, her laughter from the bar, her dismissal. Ethan's warning, the receipt. It was all real, and it was all wrong. I wasn't just losing James. I was losing everyone, and the weight of that truth was crushing me. I stood in our bedroom, the lamplight casting soft shadows on the walls, but everything felt wrong, like the air itself was too heavy to breathe. It was past midnight, and James had just gotten home. His tie loosened, his face tired but guarded. I'd been waiting for hours, the hotel receipt burning a hole in my pocket, my heart hammering with every creak of the house. I couldn't keep pretending, couldn't let another day pass with this secret eating me alive. I needed the truth, no matter how much it hurt. He tossed his keys on the dresser, the clink sharp in the silence. "You're up late," he said, not looking at me, already unbuttoning his shirt like this was just another night. I swallowed my mouth dry and pulled the receipt from my pocket, its edges crumpled from how tightly I'd held it. "James," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "We need to talk. Now." He turned his brows, furrowing, but there was something in his eyes, guilt maybe, or fear. I held up the receipt, my hand trembling. "I found this in your jacket, Hilton, last weekend. 2 guests. You said you were at a conference, but there was no conference, was there?" My words came faster, sharper, each one a release of the pain I'd carried since the bar, since Samantha's betrayal, since Rebecca's laughter. James froze, his shirt half open, his expression shifting from confusion to something harder. "Emily, you're snooping now," he said, his voice low, almost accusing. "You went through my stuff." He stepped closer, and I backed up, clutching the receipt like a lifeline. "Don't turn this on me." I snapped, my chest tight. "Just tell me the truth. Who were you with?" "Because I know it wasn't work. I know you lied." My voice cracked, and I hated it. Hated how vulnerable I sounded, but I couldn't stop. The weeks of doubt, the whispers, Ethan's warning, it all poured out raw and unstoppable. He ran a hand through his hair, looking away, and for a moment, I thought he'd deny it, spin another story. But then he sighed heavy and final and sat on the edge of the bed, his shoulders slumping. "Fine," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "You want the truth?" It was Alyssa, my ex. We've been seeing each other for a few months. The world tilted. Alyssa. His ex from college, the one he'd sworn was ancient history, the one I'd met once at a reunion and felt small next to, with her sharp laugh and sharper eyes. My knees buckled, and I gripped the dresser to steady myself, the wood cool under my palms. "Alyssa," I repeated, my voice hollow. "You've been cheating on me with her." "For months." James looked up, his face a mix of defiance and shame. "It's not what you think, Em. It just happened. I didn't plan it." She reached out and things got complicated. "I didn't know how to tell you." His words were flimsy excuses that crumbled under the weight of my pain. I wanted to scream, to throw something, but all I could do was stare at him, the man I'd married, the man I'd built a life with, now a stranger. "Complicated," I said, my voice rising. "You're my husband, James. We made vows, and you're telling me it just happened." Tears burned my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. "That's not all, is it? There's more. I can see it in your face." He hesitated, his jaw tight, then looked down at the floor. "I want a divorce," he said, the words slicing through me like glass. "I'm sorry, Em, but I can't do this anymore. I love her. I want to be with her." The room spun, my breath catching in my throat. Divorce. Love. Alyssa. Each word was a hammer shattering everything I'd held on to. I thought of our wedding, the way he'd looked at me under the stars, promising forever. I thought of the nights I'd waited up for him, the plans we'd made for kids, a house, a future, all gone, replaced by her. I pressed a hand to my chest, trying to hold myself together, but it wasn't enough. "There's something else," I said, my voice shaking, but firm. "Samantha, Rebecca, Natalie, they knew, didn't they?" I stepped closer, forcing him to look at me. "Ethan told me at the bar. He said they knew you were with someone. Tell me I'm wrong. James's face crumpled, and that was answer enough. They found out a while back, he admitted, his voice barely audible. Alyssa ran into Samantha at a work event, and it came up. They thought you were holding me back, Em. They said I deserved to be happy. They were trying to help. Help. The word was a slap worse than anything else he'd said. My friends, the women I'd trusted with my secrets, my fears, my life, they'd known about his affair and chosen him. Chosen Alyssa. I thought of Samantha's bracelet, Rebecca's cold laugh, Natalie's whispers. They hadn't just known. They'd encouraged it, believed I wasn't enough. My hands clenched into fists, nails digging into my palms. You're saying my best friends betrayed me? I whispered, my voice breaking. They thought I was the problem. They watched me fall apart and said nothing. The pain was suffocating, a wave crashing over me, pulling me under. I wanted to collapse, to scream, to make him feel the weight of what he'd done, what they'd all done. James stood reaching for me, but I backed away, my back hitting the wall. Em, I'm sorry, he said, but his voice was empty, a hollow apology that meant nothing. I didn't want it to happen like this. I didn't want to hurt you. But he had. They all had. The receipt slipped from my hand, fluttering to the floor, and I stared at it, a small, crumpled piece of paper that had torn my world apart. My marriage was over. My friendships were lies, and I was alone, standing in the wreckage of everything I'd believed in, with no idea how to pick up the pieces. I stumbled out of the bedroom, my bare feet cold against the hardwood, James's voice fading behind me. My chest was a knot, each breath a struggle as I made my way to the kitchen. The clock on the stove blinked, 1:17 a.m., its green glow the only light in the room. I sank into a chair, my hands shaking, and pulled out my phone. I needed someone, anyone, to make sense of this. Ethan's words from the bar haunted me. Natalie knew, they all knew. I had to know how deep this went. I opened James's phone, left on the counter from earlier, my fingers moving before I could stop them. His passcode still worked, a cruel reminder of the trust I'd clung to. I went straight to his messages, scrolling past work chats until I found a group thread with Samantha, Rebecca, and Natalie. The name was innocuous, weekend plans, but the contents hit like a sledgehammer. My eyes burned as I read each message, a fresh wound. Samantha M's getting suspicious. You need to be careful, Jay. Rebecca. She's so needy, it's pathetic. Alyssa's way better for you. Natalie. Just tell her soon. She'll get over it. We've got your back. There were dozens of messages stretching back months, each one worse than the last. They'd mocked my worries, called me clingy, laughed about how I'd never see it coming. There was a photo too. Alyssa and James at a restaurant, her hand on his, their smiles bright while I'd been home cooking dinner waiting for him. My friends had known every detail, planned with him, cheered him on. They'd sat across from me at coffee shops, at bars, pretending to care while they tore me apart behind my back. I dropped the phone, my hands covering my mouth to stifle a sob. The kitchen spun, the cabinets and counters blurring into a haze. These weren't just betrayals. They were a conspiracy, a deliberate choice to destroy me. I thought of every moment I'd confided in them. Samantha's hugs, Rebecca's late-night calls, Natalie's silly gifts. All lies, all a performance. They'd looked me in the eye and chosen Alyssa, chosen James, chosen to humiliate me. I needed air. I grabbed my coat and slipped out the back door, the night swallowing me as I walked to the park down the street. The swings creaked in the breeze, their chains glinting under a street lamp. I sat on a bench, the wood damp from earlier rain, and let the cold seep into me. My phone buzzed, Claire checking in again, but I couldn't answer. How could I tell her my life was a lie, that the people I loved most had gutted me. I met Ethan at the park's entrance just after dawn, the sky a bruised gray. I'd texted him in a daze, needing someone to confirm this nightmare. He showed up in a hoodie, his face drawn like he hadn't slept either. "Em, you okay?" he asked, but his voice was careful, like he already knew the answer. "No," I said, my voice raw. "James told me everything. Alyssa, the divorce, and the group chat, Samantha, Rebecca, Natalie, they all knew. They helped him. They laughed at me." I choked on the words, my hands balling into fists. "Did you know how bad it was? Did you see that too?" Ethan looked away, his jaw tight. "I didn't know about the chat," he said, "but I saw them together, James and Alyssa, at a cafe a few months ago. Natalie caught me watching, told me to stay out of it. Said it was for James's happiness. I wanted to tell you, Em, but she said they'd ruin me if I did." His voice broke, and he kicked at the gravel, shame written across his face. "Ruin you?" I repeated, my voice rising. "They ruined me, Ethan. They watched me break and didn't care. They planned this, all of them." I stood, pacing, my boots crunching against the path. The park was empty, the playground still, but I felt like I was screaming into a void. I trusted them. I loved them. And they think I'm nothing. Ethan reached for my arm, but I pulled away, my anger spilling over. "You should have told me," I said, tears streaming down my face. "You saw it and said nothing. You're as bad as them." The words were unfair, I knew it, but the pain was too big, swallowing everything. I turned, running my hands through my hair, my breath hitching. "I'm sorry," he said, but I barely heard him. The truth was a weight I couldn't carry, my husband, my friends, all conspiring to erase me. I sank back onto the bench, my body folding in on itself. The swings kept creaking, a lonely sound that matched the ache in my chest. I was alone, betrayed by everyone, and the world felt like it was crumbling beneath me, with no way to stop the fall. I woke up on Claire's couch, the morning light slicing through her apartment blinds, sharp against my swollen eyes. The park bench, Ethan's confession, James's betrayal, they clung to me like damp clothes, heavy and cold. Claire had driven through the night to get me after my frantic voicemail, her arms around me the moment I collapsed at her door. Now she was in the kitchen, brewing coffee, the smell grounding me just enough to think. I couldn't stay broken. I wouldn't. Those people, James, Samantha, Natalie, they'd taken enough. It was time to take something back. I sat up, my body aching from the night's weight, and pulled my hair into a messy bun. Claire handed me a mug, her eyes soft but fierce. "You don't have to decide everything today, Em," she said, sitting across from me. "But you can't let them walk all over you." "What do you want to do?" I sipped the coffee, its bitterness sharp on my tongue. What did I want? I wanted my life back, my trust, my heart. But that was gone. What I could have was the truth out in the open, no more secrets. I set the mug down, my hands steady for the first time in days. "I'm going to confront them," I said, my voice low but firm. "Starting with Natalie. She's the weakest link. I want her to know I see her." Claire nodded, a small smile tugging at her lips. "That's my sister," she said. "I'll drive. Let's make her sweat." We spent the morning planning, Claire pulling up Natalie's work schedule from a mutual friend's social media. She worked at a boutique downtown, a trendy place with glass walls and overpriced scarves. It was public perfect for what I needed to do. I didn't want to scream or cry. I wanted Natalie to feel the weight of her choices, to see me standing tall in her space. By noon, I was outside the boutique, the autumn wind biting at my cheeks. I wore James's old college hoodie, the one he'd left at home, its faded logo, a quiet rebellion. My heart pounded as I pushed open the door, the chime announcing me. Natalie was behind the counter, folding sweaters, her dark hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail. She looked up, her smile freezing when she saw me. "Emily," she said, her voice high like she'd been caught stealing. "What are you doing here?" I walked straight to the counter, ignoring the curious glance of a customer browsing nearby. "We need to talk," I said, my voice calm but unyielding. "Now." I leaned in close enough to see the panic flicker in her eyes. "I know about James and Alyssa. I know you knew. I saw the group chat, Natalie. You laughed at me, planned with them, thought I'd never find out." Her face drained of color, her hands gripping the counter. It's not what you think," she stammered, glancing around like she hoped someone would save her. "I didn't mean. We were just trying to help James. He was unhappy and unhappy." I cut her off, my voice rising just enough to make her flinch. "You think that justifies lying to me? Mocking me? You sat in my house, ate my food, called me your friend, and the whole time you were helping my husband cheat." My words were steady, each one a brick laid between us, building a wall she couldn't climb. The customer nearby paused, pretending to study a scarf, but I didn't care who heard. "Let them listen. Let the world know." Natalie's eyes darted to the back room like she wanted to run. "I'm sorry, okay?" she said, her voice shaking. "I didn't want to hurt you. It just got out of hand. Please, can we talk somewhere else?" She reached for my arm, but I stepped back, my gaze locked on hers. "No," I said, my voice cold. "You don't get to hide this. You chose your side and it wasn't mine. Live with that." I turned, my boots clicking on the polished floor as I walked out, leaving her standing there, her mouth open, no words left. The chime rang again as the door closed behind me, and I stood on the sidewalk, my breath visible in the crisp air. My chest was tight, but it wasn't just pain anymore. It was power, a spark igniting inside me, small but fierce. Claire was waiting in her car, her eyes wide when I slid into the passenger seat. "How'd it go?" she asked, her voice cautious but proud. I leaned back, my hands still trembling, but my mind clear. "She's shaken," I said, "and I'm just getting started." I pulled out my phone, opening the screenshots of the group chat Claire had helped me save last night. Natalie was done. Samantha and Rebecca were next. I wasn't the weak one anymore. They'd underestimated me, and I was ready to show them how wrong they were. I sat in Claire's car outside the community center, the late afternoon sun glinting off the building's glass doors. My confrontation with Natalie still buzzed in my veins, a mix of adrenaline and something new resolve. I'd shaken her, made her see me not as the naive friend she'd mocked, but as someone who could fight back. Now it was Rebecca's turn. She'd been the cruelest in that group chat, her words slicing deepest, calling me pathetic, cheering for Alyssa. I wasn't just going to call her out. I was going to make her feel the weight of what she'd done. Claire squeezed my hand, her eyes steady. "You sure about this one?" she asked. "Rebecca's not like Natalie. She'll fight dirty." I nodded, my jaw tight. I knew Rebecca's edges, her sharp tongue, her need to be admired. She volunteered at the community center every Wednesday, teaching art classes to kids basking in their adoration. It was the perfect place to confront her, where her mask of kindness couldn't hide her truth. I stepped out of the car, my sneakers soft against the pavement, James's hoodie still draped over me like armor. In my pocket, I carried the printed screenshots of the group chat, each one a weapon I'd use carefully. The center was busy, parents dropping off kids, volunteers bustling with supplies. I slipped inside, the air warm with the smell of paint and glue. Rebecca was in the art room, surrounded by a dozen kids, her laugh loud as she helped a girl with a clay sculpture. She looked so at ease, so good, and for a moment I faltered. Memories of our friendship, flashing late-night drives, her teaching me to bake bread, our shared tears over old heartbreaks. Then I saw her phone on the table, the same one she'd used to mock me, and the pain roared back. I waited until the class ended, kids filing out with their parents, their chatter fading down the hall. Rebecca was cleaning up stacking paintbrushes when I walked in. She glanced up, her smile slipping. "Emily." "What's this about?" she asked, her voice wary, like she already knew. I closed the door behind me, the click loud in the quiet room. "I know everything." "Rebecca," I said, my voice steady though my heart raced. "James, Alyssa, the group chat. I saw what you wrote, how you laughed at me, how you said I was holding him back. You were my best friend, and you chose them over me." Her face hardened, but her eyes flickered with something, guilt, maybe, or fear. She crossed her arms, leaning against the table. "So, you're playing detective now," she said, her tone sharp. "You're blowing this out of proportion, Em. James was miserable with you. We were just supporting him. You don't get to make me the villain here." Her words stung, but I didn't flinch. I pulled the screenshots from my pocket, holding them up. "These say otherwise," I said. "You called me pathetic. You planned with him with Alyssa while I was falling apart. You looked me in the eye and lied over and over." My voice rose, not loud, but fierce, and I saw her shift, uncomfortable, as two volunteers paused outside the door, glancing in. Rebecca's composure cracked, her hands dropping to her sides. "You don't understand," she said, her voice shaking. "I was jealous. Okay, you had James, this perfect life, and I wanted that. Alyssa was my friend too, and I thought—" She stopped, tears welling, but I didn't soften. Her jealousy wasn't my burden to carry. "Jealous," I said, stepping closer. "You think that excuse is betraying me? You watched me hurt and laughed. You don't get to cry now." The volunteers were openly staring, one whispering to the other, and I raised my voice just enough. "Everyone here thinks you're so kind, Rebecca, but I know the truth, and now they will too." I set the screenshots on the table, the pages fanning out, her words exposed for anyone to see. She lunged for them, her face red, but I stepped back, letting her scramble. "Emily, please," she said, her voice breaking. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean it. Don't do this." But her apology was too late, too small for the damage she'd done. I turned, walking out, the murmurs of the volunteers following me. I didn't look back, didn't need to. I'd said what I came to say, and Rebecca's world was cracking, just like mine had. Outside, I leaned against Claire's car, the cool metal grounding me. My phone buzzed, Samantha, a furious text about Natalie's confrontation, demanding I stop. I deleted it, my finger steady. I wasn't done. Not yet. Claire climbed out, her eyes searching mine. "You okay?" she asked. I nodded, a quiet strength settling in my chest. "I'm getting there," I said. I pulled a small notebook from my bag, one I'd started last night, its pages filled with my thoughts, my pain, my plans. I opened it, my pen hovering over a blank page, and wrote one word: Samantha. Then I closed it, slipping it back into my bag, my eyes fixed on the horizon. The fight wasn't over, but for the first time, I felt like I was the one in control, and that was enough for now. I sat in the lawyer's office, the leather chair creaking under me, the air thick with the scent of polished wood and stale coffee. The desk in front of me was cluttered with files, a brass paperweight shaped like a scales of justice glinting in the fluorescent light. My attorney, Ms. Harper, a woman with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense bob, flipped through the screenshots I'd brought, pages of the group chat where Samantha, Rebecca, and Natalie had mocked me, planned with James, and cheered for Alyssa. Each word was evidence, a brick in the case we were building against him. My hands fidgeted with the paperweight, its weight grounding me as I tried to focus. Ms. Harper looked up, her pen pausing. "This is strong, Emily," she said, her voice calm but firm. "The infidelity, the documented collusion it gives us, leverage. We can push for a better settlement, maybe even alimony. But it's going to get messy. Are you ready for that?" Her eyes searched mine, and I nodded, though my stomach twisted. Messy was an understatement. I'd already confronted Natalie and Rebecca, left them reeling in their own shame. But James was different. He was the root of this, and facing him in court meant tearing open every wound. I left the office with a folder of legal papers, my steps heavy on the sidewalk. The autumn leaves crunched under my boots, the air crisp and biting. I'd parked a block away, and as I rounded the corner, I saw her, Samantha, leaning against my car. Her arms crossed her face, a storm of anger. My pulse spiked, but I kept walking, my grip tightening on the folder. I'd planned to confront her next, but not like this, not on her terms. "Emily, what the hell?" she snapped as I approached, her voice loud enough to turn heads. A couple passing by glanced over, then hurried on. "You went after Natalie at her job, Rebecca at the center. You're trying to ruin us, aren't you?" Her blonde hair was pulled back, her eyes blazing, but there was something brittle in her posture, like she was holding herself together by force. I stopped a few feet away, my voice low and steady. "Ruin you," I said. "You did that yourselves. You lied to me, Sam. You helped James cheat, laughed about it, planned it. I trusted you, and you stabbed me in the back." I stepped closer, my words measured but sharp. "I'm just making sure everyone knows who you really are." Her face flushed, and she pushed off the car, pointing a finger at me. "You're acting like a victim, but you pushed him away, Emily. You were always so needy, always checking up on him." No wonder he went to Alyssa. Her words were meant to cut, but they landed differently now, like stones thrown by someone desperate. I saw the couple from earlier stop pretending to check their phones, their eyes darting toward us. I took a breath, my voice colder. "You don't get to rewrite this, Sam. I saw the chat. You called me pathetic, said I deserved it. You chose him over me, and now you're mad because I'm not staying quiet." I opened the folder, pulling out a single screenshot, the one where she'd written, "M's clueless. It's hilarious." I held it up, letting her see it, letting the couple see it too. "This is who you are, and I'm done protecting you." Samantha's eyes widened, her hand reaching for the paper, but I pulled it back, tucking it away. Her mouth opened, then closed, her face crumpling like she'd been slapped. "You're a bitch," she whispered, but her voice shook, and I saw tears glinting in her eyes. She turned, storming off her heels, clicking against the pavement, leaving the air between us charged and heavy. I stood there, my heart pounding, the folder pressed against my chest. The couple moved on whispering, and I felt their judgment, their curiosity, like a spotlight I hadn't asked for. I'd wanted Samantha to feel my pain, and I'd succeeded. She was rattled, exposed, just like Natalie and Rebecca. But the victory was hollow. My hands trembled as I unlocked my car, the keys slipping once before I got the door open. I slid inside, the silence of the car wrapping around me, and leaned my head against the steering wheel. I'd taken control, but at what cost? My friends, my marriage, my sense of who I was, they were gone, replaced by this new version of me, someone who fought, but felt the weight of every blow. I thought of Claire, waiting at her apartment, of the legal battle ahead of James's face when he learned I wasn't backing down. My phone buzzed in my pocket, and I pulled it out, expecting another angry text from Samantha. It was Lauren, a coworker I barely knew. Her message simple. "Heard what's going on. I'm here if you need to talk." I stared at the words, a small crack of light in the dark. But it wasn't enough to lift the heaviness settling over me. I set the phone down, my eyes fixed on the empty street, the world feeling both too big and too small. And I wondered if this fight was breaking me as much as it was breaking them. I drove to a mutual friend's barbecue that evening, the sky bruised with twilight, the air heavy with the promise of rain. My hands gripped the steering wheel, still shaky from my run-in with Samantha outside the lawyer's office. Claire had insisted I go, said it was a chance to tell my side, to stop the whispers that were already spreading through our small town. I wasn't sure I had the strength, but I'd brought a homemade pie, my mom's cherry recipe, its lattice crust, a fragile attempt to feel normal. The pie sat on the passenger seat, its tin glinting in the fading light, a quiet reminder that I was still here, still trying. The backyard was crowded when I arrived, string lights swaying above picnic tables, the smell of grilled burgers mixing with laughter. I recognized faces, old high school friends, coworkers, neighbors, all people who'd known me and James as a unit, as the couple who hosted game nights, who danced at every summer festival. Now their eyes lingered as I stepped through the gate, pie in hand, my shoulders squared despite the weight in my chest. I set the pie on a table next to bowls of potato salad and stacks of paper plates, and felt the shift in the air, conversations dipping as people noticed me. I found a spot by the fire pit, the crackle of burning logs grounding me. A few people approached Lauren. My coworker gave me a quick hug, her smile warm but cautious. "You're brave for coming," she whispered, and I nodded, unsure if brave was the right word. I felt exposed, like my pain was on display for everyone to dissect. Then I saw them across the yard, a cluster of mutual friends, people who'd been at our wedding, who'd toasted our future. They were talking heads close, glancing my way. I caught snippets, James's name, Alyssa's mine, and my stomach twisted. They knew. Everyone knew. I took a deep breath and walked over my boots, sinking into the grass. "Hey," I said, my voice steady, cutting through their murmurs. They froze, faces a mix of guilt and curiosity. One of them, Greg, a guy James played poker with, cleared his throat. We heard. We're sorry," he said, but his eyes darted away like he couldn't bear to hold my gaze. "Sorry doesn't cut it," I said, my words quiet but sharp. "I deserve the truth. You've all heard the rumors, so let me set it straight. James cheated with Alyssa. For months. Samantha, Rebecca, Natalie, they knew, helped him, laughed at me behind my back. I've got proof texts, everything. They betrayed me, and I'm done letting them hide it." My voice didn't waver, but my hands trembled at my sides, hidden in my pockets. The group went silent, the fire pit's crackle the only sound. Greg shifted his wife Tara, looking down at her plate. "Another friend." Mike rubbed his neck, muttering, "That's messed up, Em." But it was their eyes that hit hardest. Pity, discomfort, some even glancing away like my pain was too much to witness. I'd wanted them to understand, to take my side, but this wasn't triumph. It was raw, messy, and it left me feeling more alone than before. Then the gate creaked, and Alyssa walked in. My breath caught the world narrowing to her, her sleek hair, her confident stride, the way she scanned the yard like she belonged. People turned, whispers rippling, and I felt every pair of eyes on me, waiting for what I'd do. Alyssa spotted me, her steps faltering, and for a moment, we just stared, the air between us electric with unspoken history. She started toward me, her face softening, and my heart pounded, every nerve screaming to run. "Emily," she said, stopping a few feet away, her voice low, almost pleading. "Can we talk? Please? I owe you an explanation." Her hands twisted together, her eyes wide, like she was the one hurting. The crowd watched, their silence suffocating, and I felt the weight of their judgment, their curiosity pinning me in place. I stepped forward, my voice barely above a whisper, but it carried. "You don't get to explain," I said, my words ice cold. "You took my husband, my life, and you think words fix that. You don't get forgiveness, Alyssa. Not from me. I turned, walking back to the fire pit, my back straight, my heart hammering. The yard was still, no one daring to speak, and I felt their eyes follow me, a mix of awe and unease. I sat by the fire, staring into the flames, the heat prickling my skin. Lauren slid onto the bench beside me, her presence quiet but steady. "You okay?" she asked, her voice soft. I didn't answer, my eyes fixed on the embers, their glow fading into ash. I'd spoken my truth, shown them who Alyssa was, who my friends were, but the victory was hollow. The pie sat untouched on the table, its crust crumbling at the edges like everything else I'd tried to hold together. I'd fought, but the cost was sinking in, and it left me empty, staring into the fire, wondering if I'd ever feel whole again. I drove out to Willow Lake just after sunrise, the road winding through fields of goldenrod and fading cornstalks. The lake was an hour from town, a place I hadn't visited since I was a kid when my dad would take me and Claire fishing on summer mornings. My new apartment felt too small, too full of unpacked boxes and echoes of the life I'd left, so I needed this open sky, still water, a chance to breathe. My sneakers crunched on the gravel path as I walked to the shore, a thermos of tea warm in my hands, the air crisp with the first bite of November. The lake stretched out its surface smooth as glass, reflecting the soft pinks and purples of dawn. I settled on a flat rock by the water's edge, the stone cold through my jeans. For weeks, I'd been running on anger, on the need to confront, to prove I wasn't the fool they'd thought I was. Natalie's panic, Rebecca's tears, Samantha's rage, the barbecue where I'd faced Alyssa. It had all fueled me, kept me moving. But now, with the legal papers filed and James out of my life, I was left with just me. And I didn't know what that meant anymore. I unscrewed the thermos, the steam curling up as I poured chamomile tea into the lid. The scent was soft, calming, a contrast to the storm I'd lived in. I took a sip, letting it warm my throat, and pulled my jacket tighter. The lake was quiet, save for the occasional ripple from a fish or the rustle of leaves in the breeze. I reached into my pocket, pulling out a small, smooth stone I'd found on my last walk here years ago. It was shaped like a lopsided heart, its edges worn by time. I turned it over in my hand, tracing its curves, and let my mind wander. I thought about the girl I'd been before James, before the betrayals. The one who'd dreamed of opening a bakery, who'd spent hours sketching recipes in a spiral notebook, who'd laughed without checking who was watching. That girl felt so far away, buried under the weight of lies and loss. But sitting here with the lake stretching out like a promise, I wondered if I could find her again. Not the same, not whole, but something new pieced together from the parts I'd salvaged. A bird skimmed the water, its wings brushing the surface, and I followed it with my eyes until it disappeared into the trees. I'd spent so long fighting James, fighting my friends, fighting the version of myself that had trusted them. But fighting wasn't living. It was surviving, and I was tired of just surviving. I wanted to feel the sun on my face, to taste my own cooking, to build something that was mine. The thought was fragile, like the first green shoot after a long winter. But it was there, and I held on to it. My phone buzzed in my pocket, pulling me back. It was a text from Lauren, my coworker, who'd become a quiet anchor these past weeks. "Book club tonight at my place. You in?" she wrote. I stared at the message, my thumb hovering over the screen. A month ago, I'd have said no too raw, too afraid of being seen. But now the idea of sitting with strangers talking about stories felt like a step I could take. I typed back, "I'll bring cookies," and hit send before I could overthink it. I stood, brushing dirt from my jeans, and walked to the water's edge. The lake was still, its reflection unbroken, and I saw myself in it. Not the broken woman from the park bench, not the angry one who'd faced her betrayers, but someone new. Someone who was learning to stand alone. I tossed the heart-shaped stone into the water, watching it sink, its ripples spreading wide. It wasn't letting go, not completely, but it was a start. I picked up my thermos, the tea still warm, and turned back to the path, my steps lighter, my breath steady, ready to see what came next. Back at my new apartment, the evening light filtered through a single window, painting the bare walls in shades of gold. The place was small, just a one-bedroom with scuffed floors and a leaky faucet, but it was mine, a space I was shaping day by day. I stood in the living room surrounded by half-unpacked boxes, their flaps open like mouths waiting to speak. My hands were dusty from moving things around, and I wiped them on my jeans, pausing to take in the quiet. For the first time in months, it didn't feel oppressive. I knelt by a box labeled Miss, pulling out a framed photo of me and Claire from when we were kids, maybe 9 and 11, our faces smudged with dirt from a day spent building forts in the backyard. We were grinning, gap-toothed, and carefree, unaware of the fractures life would bring. I traced the glass with my finger, a smile tugging at my lips. Claire had been my rock through all of this. James, the betrayals, the divorce papers. She'd driven through the night, held me when I cried, pushed me to fight. This photo wasn't just a memory. It was proof I'd always had someone, even when I felt alone. I hung it on the wall, stepping back to adjust it until it was level. The nail I'd hammered in earlier felt like a small victory, a mark of claiming this space. I turned to another box, pulling out a stack of old journals, their covers worn from years of late-night scribbling. I'd started writing again, not just about the pain, but about the small things, how the coffee shop barista remembered my order, how the neighbor's dog barked at exactly 7 a.m. Writing was my way of stitching myself back together word by word. My phone pinged on the counter and I glanced over. It was an email from Natalie, the subject line blank. My stomach tightened, but I opened it, curiosity outweighing dread. Her words were long, rambling, a plea for forgiveness, an explanation about how she'd been caught up in the moment, how she hadn't meant to hurt me. She wanted to meet, to talk, to fix things. I read it twice, my thumb hovering over the reply button. A month ago, I'd have been angry, maybe even tempted to hear her out. But now I felt nothing but a quiet clarity. I typed a short response. I wish you well, but we're done. Please don't contact me again. I hit send, then set the phone down, my hands steady. It wasn't about vengeance anymore. It was about choosing myself, drawing a line where I'd once blurred everything for others. Natalie's email was a ghost from a life I no longer lived, and I let it fade without a fight. The doorbell buzzed, startling me. It was Ethan, Natalie's brother, holding a potted plant, his expression sheepish. I was in the neighborhood, he said, shifting on his feet. Thought you might like this. It's a peace lily. Low maintenance. His eyes met mine, and I saw the weight he carried, guilt for staying silent too long, for being caught in his sister's web. I took the plant, its leaves glossy and green, and set it on the windowsill. Thanks, I said, my voice soft but genuine. Want to come in? He nodded, stepping inside, and we sat on the couch, the only furniture I'd fully set up. He talked about his own struggles, how Natalie's loyalty to James had strained their family, how he'd lost friends for speaking up to me at the park. His honesty was raw, unguarded, and I listened not as the betrayed friend, but as someone who understood what it meant to rebuild. I should have told you sooner, he said, staring at his hands. I keep replaying it, wishing I'd been braver. I leaned forward, meeting his gaze. You told me when it mattered, I said. That's enough. The words surprised me, not because they weren't true, but because I meant them. Forgiveness wasn't erasure. It was letting go of the anger that had chained me. He left soon after, and I stood in the doorway, the plant catching the last of the daylight. The apartment was still the boxes waiting, but I didn't feel rushed. I walked to the kitchen, grabbing a paint roller and a can of yellow paint I'd bought on impulse. It was a color James had always hated, too bright, too bold. I dipped the roller and started on the longest wall, the yellow spreading like a sunrise, claiming the space as mine. Each stroke was deliberate, a quiet act of becoming. I stepped back, paint flecking my hands, and looked at the wall, its brightness a promise I was starting to believe in. I sit at a corner table in the daily grind, a small cafe a few blocks from my apartment, the hum of conversation blending with the hiss of the espresso machine. It's been a year since I walked away from James, from the friends who broke me, from the life I thought I'd live forever. My journal lies open in front of me, its pages filled with ink, some words smudged from late-night thoughts. I'm writing again, not just to process pain, but to capture the small joys, a sunrise I watched last week, the way my new coworker laughs at my terrible puns. The pen feels like an extension of me now, a way to make sense of who I'm becoming. The cafe is warm, its walls lined with mismatched bookshelves, the air thick with the scent of cinnamon and roasted beans. I sip my coffee, served in a mug with a quote about courage etched in faded script. It's not the kind of place I'd have come to a year ago. Too busy keeping up with James's schedules with friends who never really saw me. Now I'm here most mornings, claiming this table as my own, watching the world move without needing to chase it. I glance out the window, catching sight of a woman across the street, her blonde hair catching the light. For a moment, my heart skips. She looks like Samantha. But it's not her, just a stranger hurrying to work. And I exhale, letting the tension slip away. I don't flinch at those ghosts anymore. Samantha, Rebecca, Natalie, they're gone from my life. Their apologies unanswered, their roles reduced to lessons I carry but don't dwell on. I don't hate them. I don't need to. They're part of a story I've outgrown. My life is quieter now, but not empty. I've started baking again, something I loved before marriage swallowed my time. Last night, I stayed up late perfecting a lemon tart recipe, the kitchen filled with the zest's sharp brightness, my hands dusted with flour. I brought the tart to Lauren's book club, and the group's laughter as they fought over the last slice felt like a warmth I hadn't known I could find again. These people, Lauren, Ethan, a few new faces they don't know, the old me, the one who trusted too easily. They know this me, the one who shows up, who listens, who's learning to laugh without checking the room. I flip a page in my journal, my pen tapping the paper. I've been mentoring a young woman, Haley, who works at the cafe. She's barely 20, with a quiet strength and a story of her own, a boyfriend who lied, friends who turned their backs. I saw myself in her, the way she held her pain close, afraid to let it go. We talked during her breaks, me sipping coffee, her wiping down tables, sharing pieces of our lives. I don't give advice, not really. I just listen, tell her how I kept going, how I found this table, this pen, this life. She started writing too, her own journal tucked in her apron pocket, and I feel a quiet pride, like I'm passing something forward. The cafe door chimes and a group of students spills in, their voices bright with plans for the weekend. I watch them, remembering how I used to envy that kind of ease, that sense of belonging. I don't envy it anymore. I've built my own belonging piece by piece, a morning here, a tart shared, a sentence written. It's not perfect, not the life I planned, but it's mine, and that's enough. I take another sip of coffee, the mug's warmth steadying me. The journal page stares up blank now, waiting. I don't know what I'll write next, but I'm not afraid of the empty space. I've filled it before with grief, with anger, with hope. I'll fill it again, one word at a time, trusting that the story I'm writing is one I can live with. The cafe hums around me, a small world I'm part of, and I lean back, letting the moment settle soft and sure. I close my journal and tuck it into my bag, the cafe's warmth lingering on my skin as I step outside. The street is alive with evening bustle, people heading home, streetlights flickering on the hum of a distant bus. I pull my scarf tighter, my breath visible in the cool air, and start walking toward the community garden a few blocks away. It's a place I've come to love, a patchwork of raised beds and wildflowers, where I've started volunteering, tending to herbs, and pulling weeds on weekends. The work is simple, grounding a way to feel, my hands in the earth and my heart in the present. Tonight, the garden is quiet, the beds dusted with frost, the basil I planted last month still thriving under a plastic cover. I kneel by it, brushing my fingers over the leaves, their sharp scent rising into the air. I think about the past year, not the pain of it, James's betrayal, my friend's lies, but the way it carved me into someone new. I used to think strength meant fighting, winning, proving I was right. I'd stood up to Natalie, Rebecca, Samantha faced. Alyssa walked away from James with my head high. But those moments, as fierce as they were, weren't the end. They were the beginning, the breaking open of a life I hadn't known I could claim. I stand wiping dirt from my knees and look at the garden's edge where a wooden bench sits under a bare maple tree. I settle there, the wood creaking, and let my eyes trace the stars starting to prick through the dusk. The lesson wasn't in the confrontations or the divorce papers. It was in what came after, in the quiet choices I made to keep going. I learned that betrayal doesn't just show you who others are, it shows you who you can be. It strips you bare, but in that rawness, you find your own voice, your own worth. I forgave not because they deserved it, but because I deserved to be free. I chose myself not with loud declarations, but with every step I took toward this life, my apartment, my garden, my mornings, with a pen in hand. I think about Haley, the young woman I mentor, how her eyes light up when she talks about her dreams, how she's learning to trust again. I think about Claire, who's planning a visit next month, our bond stronger than ever. I think about the strangers in this garden, the ones I'll never know who'll taste the herbs I grew and feel a moment of joy. My life isn't a fairy tale. It's messy, imperfect, full of days when I still doubt myself. But it's mine, and that's the gift. I didn't expect the freedom to build something true, not for anyone else, but for me. I pull a sprig of basil from my pocket, one I'd clipped earlier, and twirl it between my fingers. Its scent is a promise, a reminder that growth happens in small, steady ways. I tuck it into my bag next to my journal and stand the bench creaking again. The stars are brighter now, the garden still, and I feel a quiet certainty settle in my bones. I'm not the woman I was, and I'm not yet the woman I'll be, but I'm here, and that's enough. What's a moment that changed how you saw yourself? I'd love to hear your story in the comments. It's these shared pieces of us that make us stronger. If this journey resonated with you, please give it a like, subscribe to hear more, and share it with someone who might need it. Thank you for being here, for listening, for carrying your own light through the dark. Here's to finding our way, one step at a time.